Hi guys. Okay, this is part 2 because my video got cut off. So as I was saying that at the beginning of the year, we would have to add back the repurchase of 75,000 because 2,500,000 is actually the rand amount, okay? So they are saying on the 8th of Feb that we had 2,500,000 rand of retained income, but this 2,500,000, they got this amount after the repurchase took place because it's saying that this transaction was properly recorded. So now that I know the value of the repurchase, I'm going to go back to the balance at the beginning. I'm just going to write it at the top here because I didn't make space for myself, but it will be 2,500,000 plus the 75,000, right? So then I'm gonna add 2,500,000 plus 75,000 in my calculator, and I will get 2,575,000. Then for the net profit after tax, so because at this point during the reading time I would have read over my entire question, I will just skip to the tax part, right? So it says SARS income tax. SARS income tax for the previous year 2023 indicated a credit balance which amounted to 80,000. The tax paid for 2024 amounted to 628,000, and the income tax for the year amounted to 648,000. So it's not telling me about the net profit before tax or the net profit after tax. This is actually telling me to calculate whether or not I owe SARS. But the next information J, says the following financial indicators were calculated on the 29th of Feb 2024 after taking the above information into account. So we have the current ratio, the net asset value per share, and we have the earnings per share. Now, if you know ratios, which at this point you should know your ratios, but if you don't, it is important to know your ratios and the formulas. You would know that specifically earnings per share is equal to my net profit after tax over my number of issued shares, or number of shares in issue, whichever you prefer, times 100 over 1. Okay, this is the formula. So because I have net profit after tax and I know the answer of the earnings per share, I'm going to manipulate this to get the net profit after tax. So let me just do that here. So again, it says that the earnings per share is equal to 120 cents. So at this point, I'm going to say earnings per share is equal to the net profit after tax over the number of shares in issue times 100 over 1. Okay, then the net profit after tax is what I want. What I have is 1,800,000. Where did I get this one from? So basically, if you look at the information, it says on the 29th of Feb 2024, 1,800,000 shares were in issue. So it's telling me the number of shares that was in issue at the end of the year. Times 100 over 1. And then they told me that the earnings per share was 120. So basically, if I turn the equation around, I'll say net profit after tax over 1,800,000 1000 times 100 over 1, which is equal to 120, because I want what I'm looking for to be on the left. Then the net profit after tax, I'm going to say 1 million, sorry, I'm going to say 120 times 1,800,000 over 100. So basically what I'm doing is just whenever you have a fraction, you're just going to flip it over when it goes to the other side, or you are going to invert the fraction. So now in my calculator, I will take 120 times 1,800,000, or rather 1,800,000 divided by 100 times 120, and that's going to give me 2,160,000. This 2,160,000 is my net profit after tax. Okay, then dividends. Please note, guys, that you have that dividends is always put into a small block. All right, just put in the brackets for safety's sake. Now let's go and work out our dividends. So again, back to the information. So I know that there was information about my interim dividends and my final dividends. My interim dividend says that interim dividends of 40 cents per share was paid. So this was paid on the 1st of September. Now I already did my timeline, so I know how many shares I had at what time frame. So on the 1st of September, which is here, okay, on the 1st of September, notice that the repurchase only took place after. So if I did not issue any shares throughout the year, which they said that no new shares were issued during the financial year, and I had 1,800,000 shares at the end of the year, right after the repurchase, it means that 1,800,000 plus the 50,000 shares will give me 1,850,000 shares that I had at the beginning of the year. So the interim dividend will be 1,850,000 shares times 0.4 because of 40 cents, or 40 over 100, whichever you prefer. 1,850 times 0.4, and then I'm going to say that this is equal to 740. Okay, just a side note, if the cent amount confuses you, okay, just think of cents as percentage, as in percentage or over 100. So if I take 1,850 again and I say times 40 over 100, okay, for the percentage, it's still giving me 740,000. That is just, if you get confused with the cent sign, you can always just think of it as 40%, right? Which is equivalent to 40 over 100. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the final dividend. It says a final dividend of 60 cents per share was declared to all shares on the share register. So on the share register means that the shareholders on the 8th of Feb, when they repurchased the shares, when we rather repurchased the shares, they were no longer registered on the share register. So only 1,800,000 shares was in issue. That means I'm going to say here, for the lack of space, 1,800,000 times 0.6 or again 60 over 100, and then I'm going to get 1,080,000. Okay, now for the operation mark, which is what we look for in accounting, I'm going to take that answer plus 740,000, and I'm going to get 1,820,000. So an operation mark here. And then all I'm going to do now is to get the balance at the end is, as I see it on my paper, I'm going to enter it into my calculator. The number one thing is that I do not double count. I don't say minus minus minus. I just say minus 1,820,000, the total dividends, because remember, interim and final is the sum of the total dividends. So in my calculator, I'm going to put 2,575,000 plus 2,160,000 minus 75,000 for the repurchase minus 1,820,000 that I paid out, or I will soon to pay out the total amount in dividends. And then I'm going to get 2,840,000. So also an operation mark here. Okay, and this is 10 marks. So it is very important that you were able to get this 10 marks, or if you could not get the full 10 marks, at least you could have got the 8 marks. But it all starts from knowing the format. Okay, so the next part of the question is to prepare the statement of financial position, which I will do in the next video.